In Hollywood, franchises don't fail because of bad scripts. They fail because the wrong star is standing in front of them. Chris Pratt was the wrong star. For 5 years, he was the face of $2 billion empires. Jurassic World, Guardians of the Galaxy. Studios saw the next Harrison Ford. Then the numbers stopped lying. Passengers, $300 million gross, zero cultural memory. Fallen Kingdom, $1 billion, but audiences hated it. The Tomorrow War, a $200 million film that Paramount sent to streaming because they didn't trust it in theaters. By 2022, Jurassic World Dominion crawled to $1 billion, and the franchise died anyway. But here is what the box office hides. While Pratt's theatrical value collapsed, something else was happening to his public image. A church, a divorce, a polarization no studio knows how to price. Chris Pratt can still work, but the question is whether Hollywood will ever trust him to carry a franchise again. The cracks. 4 signals that Pratt wasn't the draw. The cracks did not appear all at once. They emerged slowly, quietly, project by project, each one carrying an explanation that seemed reasonable at the time, until the explanation stopped holding. It started with Passengers in 2016. On paper, this was a can't-miss proposition. Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, 2 of the biggest stars on the planet, in a $110 million sci-fi romance directed by Morton Tildum, fresh off The Imitation Game. The film grossed $303 million globally, respectable by any normal measure. But something went wrong that the box office numbers couldn't capture. Audiences walked out uncomfortable. The premise landed with a thud. Critics savaged it. The film became a cultural punchline. And the industry quietly noted that Pratt's charm had limits. It could not sand down a broken story. The first crack appeared, but it was easy to blame the script. From there, the pattern moved into the franchise that had made him a global star. Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom arrived in 2018 as the sequel to a $1.6 billion phenomenon. Everyone expected a drop. But $1.3 billion with a 47% Rotten Tomatoes score signaled something deeper. Audience enthusiasm was cooling. The film was dismissed as silly, convoluted, and a step down from its predecessor. Pratt was not blamed. Critics pointed at the director, the script, the franchise's absurd premise. But neither was he celebrated. He was simply there, running from dinosaurs, delivering lines that landed with diminishing returns. The industry began to wonder, was he driving the franchise, or just along for the ride? Then came the clearest signal yet. The Tomorrow War was a $200 million sci-fi action film built entirely around Pratt as the sole lead. Pre-pandemic, this would have been Paramount's summer tentpole. Instead, in 2021, the studio sold it to Amazon for streaming. The official narrative was strategic: pandemic, changing audience habits, and a better deal with Bezos. But industry insiders knew the truth. Paramount had run the numbers and decided the film was not worth a theatrical bet. It became a streaming hit, watched in millions of living rooms. But the message landed coldly in every studio executive's office. Chris Pratt could no longer open a non-franchise theatrical film at that budget. Around the same time, Pratt's public image began to fracture in ways that had nothing to do with box office. The Terminal List, his Amazon military thriller series based on the best-selling novels, was a streaming success. But the audience was sharply divided. It was embraced by conservative viewers who saw it as authentic and patriotic, but dismissed or criticized by others who found it grim and politically charged. His church affiliation, his social media follows, and his perceived politics were chipping away at the once universal likability that had made him America's sweetheart from Parks and Recreation. Hollywood took note. A star who alienates half the audience is a risk. The final franchise installment arrived in 2022. Jurassic World Dominion was supposed to be a triumphant conclusion, bringing back the original cast alongside Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard. It grossed $1 billion globally, a massive number by any standard except the one the industry uses for legacy sequels. But the reviews were brutal, the worst of the trilogy. Audiences rejected its direction, its convoluted plot, and its reliance on nostalgia over storytelling. The franchise that had carried him for nearly a decade was now dead, and he was left standing in its ashes with no clear next step. The exception that proved the rule came in 2023. Pratt voiced Mario in the animated Super Mario Bros. Movie. It grossed $1.3 billion, becoming one of the biggest animated films of all time. But Pratt's face was not on the poster. Audiences showed up for the plumbing, the mushrooms, and the nostalgia. The success proved nothing about his theatrical draw. Rather, it proved the opposite. Replace him with any competent voice actor, and the box office would not change a single dollar. Each signal on its own was explainable. A bad script, a franchise sequel's natural decline, a pandemic pivot, a polarizing series, an animated exception. But taken together, they told a single story. Chris Pratt had risen with franchises, and now he was falling with them. The alibis ran out. And the industry began to ask a question that, just a few years earlier, would have seemed absurd. Was Chris Pratt ever the draw at all?
The diagnosis. Why the Pratt Pack formula stopped working.
The cracks in Chris Pratt's career were not random. They were the symptoms of a fundamental miscalculation, one that Hollywood made, not Pratt himself. The industry had convinced itself that it had found the next Harrison Ford, but that conviction was built on an illusion, and by the time the illusion shattered, the pattern was already irreversible. What follows is a diagnosis of 4 interconnected failures: structural, perceptual, personal, and financial. First, the illusion of franchise ownership. Here is the uncomfortable truth that studios avoided for years. Chris Pratt never built an audience. He inherited one. Guardians of the Galaxy was a creation of James Gunn. The irreverent tone, the deep-cut characters, and the emotional core were Gunn's vision, not Pratt's. Pratt showed up, delivered the lines, and stood in the right place. But when Gunn was fired, the franchise's identity was never in Pratt's hands. Similarly, Jurassic World was a legacy IP that had been printing money since 1993. Audiences did not buy tickets to see Owen Grady. They bought tickets to see dinosaurs. Pratt was simply the human they tolerated between T-Rex appearances. The evidence is undeniable. Every time Pratt stepped outside those 2 containers, the results ranged from problematic to streaming only. He was not the engine, he was the windshield, and windshields get replaced. Second, the collapse of the generic action leads. The 2000s had a specific appetite, the everyman action hero. Chris Pratt, Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, all handsome, all fit, and all capable of delivering a one-liner while punching a bad guy. They were interchangeable in the best sense of the word. Studios could plug any of them into a tentpole and feel confident. Then the 2020s arrived with a different hunger. Audiences now crave specificity. Glenn Powell's cocky Texan charm, Austin Butler's transformative intensity, Pedro Pascal's wounded vulnerability. They are distinctive, irreplaceable, and impossible to replicate. Pratt, by contrast, remained what he had always been, a nice guy with a gun. In an era that rewards actors who disappear into roles, Pratt's refusal or inability to disappear began to read as bland. Third, the polarization of his public image. This was the factor no studio executive wanted to name aloud. For years, Pratt was America's sweetheart. Then, the internet turned on him. His church, Hillsong, was linked to anti-LGBTQ+ positions. His social media follows included figures that raised eyebrows. His divorce from Anna Faris and rapid remarriage to Katherine Schwarzenegger were dissected in real time. Pratt never said anything overtly political. He never endorsed a controversial candidate or posted a manifesto, but the perception shifted. Hollywood cares about risk, and a star whose name triggers online backlash introduces uncertainty into a marketing campaign. Fourth, the streaming trap that looks like success. The Tomorrow War was a hit on Amazon. The Terminal List performed strongly. Pratt's $320 million Netflix film, The Electric State, is also performing well as a top-ranked Netflix hit. On paper, this is a thriving career. But here is what the numbers hide. Streaming success is not theatrical leverage. When a film goes directly to a platform, the studio does not learn whether audiences would have paid $15 to see it in a theater. They learn only that subscribers clicked a thumbnail. Those are not the same metric. And every streaming success makes Pratt less likely to be trusted with a theatrical tentpole. He has become a valuable asset for platforms and a question mark for cinemas. The industry's message is clear. We will pay you to drive engagement, but we will not bet the weekend on your name. The diagnosis is inescapable. Pratt never owned his franchises. He borrowed them. The generic action hero model that made him a star is now obsolete. His once universal likability has fractured into something contested. And the streaming success that fills his bank account has quietly closed the door on theatrical trust. Hollywood is not looking at a star in decline. It is looking at a star who was never what they thought he was. The industry misread the data. They confused franchise enthusiasm for star power. And by the time they realized the error, Pratt was already locked into a future where the biggest bets on him happened far from a movie theater. The reaction. Hollywood's cold new calculus. Hollywood does not announce when it stops believing in a star. It simply stops calling, and the calls for Chris Pratt have grown conspicuously quiet. The evidence is found in the silence of development slates, the absence of new franchise announcements, and the careful recalibration of what Pratt is now allowed to carry. The industry has reclassified him, and the terms of that reclassification are now visible across every corner of his career. The franchise containment strategy. Pratt's run as a dual franchise anchor is over. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, 2023, was his final outing as Star-Lord. James Gunn has moved on to DC. Marvel has not announced any future plans for the character. Jurassic World is finished. Universal has pivoted to a new direction for the franchise, one that does not include Pratt or any of the previous cast. The dinosaur era that carried him for nearly a decade has closed. And here is the quiet truth. No new franchise has been announced to replace them. Pratt is not attached to any major upcoming theatrical tentpole as the sole lead. The offers that once arrived quarterly have slowed to a trickle. Studios have done the math and decided that betting a $150 million production budget on Pratt's name alone is no longer a risk worth taking. The streaming pivot as soft landing. Where theatrical doors have closed, streaming windows have opened. Pratt's future is now firmly planted on platforms where the pressure of an opening weekend does not exist. The Tomorrow War became a streaming hit for Amazon. The Terminal List was renewed for a second season. The Electric State, a $320 million Netflix film directed by the Russo brothers, is one of the most expensive streaming productions ever mounted. Pratt will continue to work, but he will no longer be a theatrical star. Streaming success is real success, but it has nothing to do with billboards on Sunset Boulevard or $100 million opening weekends. It only comes with completion rates and subscriber retention metrics. For a man who once stood astride $2 billion franchises, this is a quiet demotion. The restructured leverage. Pratt has adapted. He now produces through his company Indivisible Productions. He voices animated characters where his face is irrelevant and his name is secondary to the IP. He has built a back-end empire that insulates him from the volatility of theatrical performance. But leverage is measured by what you can demand, not what you can build. Pratt can no longer demand a $20 million upfront fee for a solo theatrical vehicle. He can no longer demand creative control over a franchise launch. He can no longer walk into any studio and leave with a green light. The blank check phase of his career, brief as it was, has ended. He is now a utility player. The unspoken truth. Here is what no studio executive will say aloud. Chris Pratt was never Harrison Ford, Will Smith, or Dwayne Johnson at his peak. He was a placeholder who happened to be standing in the right place when two massive franchises needed a face. The industry learned this lesson slowly, film by film, signal by signal. Passengers showed he couldn't salvage a broken story. The Tomorrow War showed he couldn't open a non-franchise theatrical film. Jurassic World Dominion showed that even $1 billion couldn't hide audience rejection. And the streaming pivot showed that his future belonged to platforms, not cinemas. Hollywood has not fired Chris Pratt. It has simply recalibrated its expectations. He will continue to work and earn, but he will no longer be trusted with the thing that once defined him. The industry has moved on to the next charming everyman. And Pratt, for all his talent, has been left standing in the space where his franchises used to be. Conclusion: the path forward for Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt's path forward now splits into two clear, stark choices. Path 1. The streamer anchor. Dominate Netflix, Amazon, and Apple with mid-budget action films and military thrillers. The money will be good, the pressure will be low, the audience will be substantial, but the theaters will be empty of him. He will trade opening weekends for completion rates, billboards for thumbnails. It is a viable career. It is also a quiet admission that his theatrical chapter has closed. Path 2. The voiceover empire. Continue as Mario, as Garfield, as every animated lead that needs a recognizable name. No box office pressure, no public scrutiny, no risk of a $100 million loss attached to his performance. It is a retirement in plain sight, lucrative, invisible, and utterly divorced from the franchise stardom he once chased. The Pratt case was never about one star. It was about a system that keeps mistaking franchise enthusiasm for star power. Studios are doing the same thing right now with actors you still believe are safe. The same pattern is playing out on casting slates as you watch this video. The difference is that their own cracks are still developing. The next placeholder is already being built. You just do not know their name yet. And by the time you do, the industry will have already moved on from them. If you loved this breakdown, make sure to subscribe.